To speak for yourself, let's go to LeBron James, who won his 4th ring last night. The King has now won a title for 3 different franchises.
Beast.
But playing in the bubble has brought out some critics who say it's not the same as a, quote, normal season.
No.
After the win, LeBron said, quote, "People just doubting what goes on in here. This is right up there as one of the greatest accomplishments I have."
Sell job.
Well, speaking of sell job, let's hear sell talk. Marcellus, talk to me. Will this Lakers title have an asterisk?
Yes, it will have an asterisk. Oh, you've been working on that word, too.
Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk.
You got his Hall of Fame colors on, almost. He almost said asterisk properly. Good job, my dog. Yes, it will. Look, I know who I am in basketball lore. I know who people look at me as. Clipper lover and just hating everything, especially the Lakers. I'm going to remove that clothing right now and talk to you just as the analyst I am. Is this a normal season? No.
Nope.
This is why they will have an asterisk. But people will just want to beat that up because as soon as they hear that, they feel antagonized. Why would you say that? They went through hell and all this. Let me give it to you in a few examples. Here's one. Let's just think about a normal championship season. One of the things about a championship journey is the war of attrition. The war of attrition can mean many things. It can mean, the injuries and how do you avoid the injury bug. It could be also performances that peak and that also valley. And what happens? Is your players playing hot right now? Are you going into the playoffs hot? Streaks, etc. What also happens in the war of attrition is coaching. And are you a self-correcting team? Do you learn series to series? Or are you a team just goes out there and whatever our roster is, we keep it the same way? We don't make the proper adjustments to navigate through this journey. The war of attrition is how I want to frame this. Now, let me give it to you in this way, because you and I are some track fans, and we were talking pre-show about running a little more than a normal track. 0.2 miles is a war of attrition. A war of attrition. Anyone who's ever run a marathon, and I have not. I've done a 5K. That's as close as my fat butt got to one. And I knew what they were talking about in terms of a war of attrition through the journey of a marathon. If you don't have bunions, if your feet are not callousing, if you're not going through those rigors, it's not necessarily a marathon. Now, let me propose to you. Imagine a marathon where halfway through, 13.1 miles in, they say, beep! Time out, everybody. Stop where you are. We're recording your race right now. We have your times. Go home. Come back in about 4 or 5 months and we'll finish this marathon. That would affect not only results, but performances. Some teams in the bubble, like the Phoenix Suns, won't lose the game because you stopped the marathon and restarted that marathon. Some runners will go out there and say, oh my God, you mean I get to go home? The lactic acid can go away. I can go and rehab myself. I can work on how I run properly and then enter the second half of this marathon. Acho, I end my first lap by asking you, which one is harder to run? 1 400 or 2 200s? You know that answer. Look at his face. Thank you. That's why it's an asterisk.
Let me say that there's no asterisk, and at first I'm going to diffuse your argument, and I will get to mine.
Okay.
I loved your argument, right? The marathon argument, the running argument, but there's a reason that people refer to track and field at times as an organized activity and call other sports a game. A game, Marcellus, now getting to my argument, is very simple. A game is comprised of man-made rules. See, math you love, math I love, because 2 + 2 will always equal 4. 4 + 4 will always equal 8. 8 + 8 will always equal 16. I can't say, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, America, there's a pandemic, so 4 + 4 now equals 9. That's not the way math works, but in games, rules change. See, rules typically change, however, in between seasons. This time, the rule changed in the midst of the season. Everybody still had to play under the same umbrella of rules. And although the rules altered, you still had to play under them because that is what makes a game a game. So there's not an asterisk for one reason. This is actually the most ultimate way a game can be played. Chaos was thrown in the midst of it. Okay, so you have to pause the season in the midst of it. Then you have to go to a bubble in the midst of it. Then we had play-in games in the midst of it. You lost home court advantage in the midst of it. So when you think about a game, a sport comprised of man-made rules, men changed the rules in the midst of the game, and LeBron still conquered and defied them all. So I would actually say this is the most optimal performance of game, of basketball game, as far as the epitome of game that has been played.
That was some of the most impressive, elastic rhetoric I've ever heard in my life. Like, you really nailed a take that I disagree with, but I respect fully. But I need someone to come in here and break this tie. So it's time for us to bring in Slick Rick the Bucher. And Slick Rick, break this tie. Will the Lakers title have an asterisk?
I'm sorry, Marcellus, but your entire opening to the conversation, what I kept hearing over and over was, see what happened with the Clippers was.
See, I knew it. I took that off. Took those clothes off.
That's what I heard. Look, the reality is in any championship run, in any season, in any sport, we can create the terms of an asterisk. And it is asterisk.
Yes.
But technically and literally, there will be no asterisk in the record books when it comes to this championship any more than there was in '99 when the Spurs won in a lockout season, or any previous disrupted season. The fact of the matter is there are all sorts of disruptions in championship runs. Do we put an asterisk on the Super Bowl 47 because the lights went out and the power went out and the Ravens ended up beating the 49ers? Are we putting an asterisk on the Houston Astros World Series last year? Are we putting an asterisk on the Warriors' first championship when Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving couldn't finish? Or LeBron's championship in Cleveland when Draymond Green was suspended for a game and Steph Curry's playing with a sprained knee and they had injuries as well. So I think that in every instance, you can find a reason to say, oh, well, if this hadn't happened, then maybe there would have been a different outcome. The bottom line is everybody faces the same circumstances and somebody prevails over them. And that's why I'm not going to take anything away from the Lakers having won this in the bubble. I don't know that I'm going to necessarily look at it as greater than or less than, but a championship is a championship.
Well, I will continue to be by myself maybe at the pandemic parade for the Lakers on Figueroa and Kobe Bryant Boulevard and sit there and say, you know what? There's still an asterisk by this. And I tell you why. One of the unintended consequences of the bubble were the elimination games. A game like we saw last night in terms of crowning a champion. Dudes were trying to go home. Let me just be frank with this. And you never, ever saw the reward so grand, so great, and so vividly as you saw in the bubble from teams and players that just, hey, they didn't have the same measure of fight. Because if you say in one sense, this is so hard to deal with, you're away from your family, you're just stuck in here, and there's nothing to do but play basketball, and I miss everyone. Guess what? When you lose, you're kind of like, yeah, I get to go back to all of that. And this is a player speak kind of conversation where many a times it leaks out that someone was happy in a loss. Dwayne Haskins kind of went through this lately. Someone went on the team playing after a loss and was like, yo, move on. Even Deion Sanders talks about when he lost, hey, whatever, let's get on to the next. So this was a different climate in terms of elimination games and the fight you saw from teams that were outnumbered or outmatched. But let me give it to you with a couple more examples before we move on. Shaquille O'Neal, as I sum up, said, you should scrap the NBA season without an asterisk champ. Quote. Okay, Scottie Pippen went out there and said a lot of things, but one of the quotes was, it's not NBA basketball in the bubble. But let me bring it to an active championship coach and former championship player, Steve Kerr. Back to my track example, sort of. He was asked about the greatness of his teams in Chicago. And could they have ever won 8 straight? Remember, they won a three-peat, 2 years off, basically, for Jordan, and a three-peat. And someone asked Steve Kerr one time, could the Bulls have ever won 8 straight? Like the war of attrition, like never taking a break to recharge Michael Jordan, etc. He said, quote, that sounds preposterous. Preposterous. No way he could have done it. My point is this, you guys won't start and finish and understand the consequences of that journey, that duration. And that's why this is an asterisk. That break right there gave relief and a reset that you never get in any other season.
But here's the reality, Marcellus. I've seen plenty of situations where guys realize that the time is up, the season is over, and they're not fighting to the very last minute, and they're not in the bubble.
True.
So I don't think that that is exclusive to the bubble. And as I said, I'm not going to give it an asterisk. I'm also not going to give it an exclamation point, because I look at, yes, are there challenges in dealing with the circumstances of the bubble? Absolutely. But I also, as I read about, they've got barbers and they've got manicurists and they can hang out at the pool and they have all sorts of recreational options. And once the playoffs started, they had their families there, and they can they have the conveniences there that people outside the bubble did not have and do not have. And so this idea that somehow this was a unique, excruciating situation and they somehow, marshaled through it and got the job done, I'm not going to give them that much. Was it hard in the bubble? I'm sure it was.
You're coming.
It's been equally hard outside the bubble, so I'm not going to add
You getting
anything
close to me, Slick. You getting close.
Let me say this, Slick. Let me say this, because Marcellus, you went to Columbia, so you should be the smartest person here in this conversation.
Test scores.
Marcellus, asterisk. What does that mean?
Oh, I have it right here. It means being appended to something, talking about sports, typically in order to indicate that there is a limiting fact or consideration which makes the thing less important or impressive than it would be otherwise.
See, somebody like me, Slick, I went to Texas, so I couldn't define asterisk, so I had to break it down. Aster comes from the Greek word star, and risk. Well, LeBron James is not going to risk his stardom by winning his 4th title, Marcellus.
Oh.
There ain't no asterisk out here.
Oh, wow.
Coming up in our big story, Dak Prescott is out for the year while on the franchise tag. We'll tell you if the Dallas Cowboys owe their star quarterback a long-term contract. That's next. See for yourself.